Trump threatens 10% tariff on Canada over controversial Ontario ad. Background: the trade relationship between the United States and Canada has long been one of the strongest economic ties in the world. Both countries have shared decades of cooperation under various free trade agreements and cross-border industry partnerships. However, tensions have resurfaced in recent years, mostly revolving around tariffs, import taxes, and stalled negotiations. Now, the situation has taken a sharp turn. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced a 10% increase in tariffs on Canadian imports, a move triggered by an advertisement aired in Ontario, Canada, which quoted former U.S. President Ronald Reagan criticizing tariffs. According to Trump, the ad was a fraudulent and hostile act against American policy and portrayed his trade strategy in a negative light. Reuters, AP News. The announcement: President Trump declared that he would impose an additional 10% import tariff on all goods entering the U.S. from Canada. The controversy centers around an Ontario government-sponsored ad that aired during the World Series, quoting Reagan as saying tariffs hurt workers and consumers. Trump accused Canadian officials of deliberately airing the ad at a politically sensitive time and of misrepresenting Reagan's words to undermine U.S. policy. "It's a dishonest campaign, and we will respond economically," Donald Trump told reporters at the White House on Saturday. He added that trade talks with Canada were now frozen indefinitely, until Ottawa takes full responsibility for the ad. While the president did not specify when the tariffs would take effect, multiple sources confirmed the U.S. Trade Office had already begun reviewing product categories for possible inclusion, including automotive parts, lumber, aluminum, and dairy products. Legal and trade context: the U.S. and Canada currently operate under the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement (USMCA), which replaced NAFTA in 2020. Under this framework, many Canadian exports enter the U.S. tariff-free. Trump's announcement therefore raised immediate legal questions. Can the U.S. unilaterally raise tariffs on a USMCA partner? Would this violate the agreement's trade protection clauses? Or could Trump use the same national security exemption he invoked during his first presidency in 2018 to justify tariffs on steel and aluminum? Trade lawyers told AP News that the situation remains unclear. The U.S. Trade Representative's office has not released any formal legal justification for the new tariffs. AP News. Canada's response: Canadian officials reacted cautiously but firmly. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc stated that the Ontario ad was not a federal initiative, emphasizing that foreign trade decisions rest with the federal government, not the provinces. He called on Washington to return to the negotiating table instead of escalating tensions. Washington Post. Ontario Premier Doug Ford said his government had ordered the ads to be pulled immediately after the controversy erupted, but confirmed they still aired briefly during the World Series broadcast due to a scheduling delay. "It was not our intention to offend the U.S. administration. The ad was part of a domestic campaign promoting trade fairness," Doug Ford said in Toronto. Despite these clarifications, the Trump administration insists that the ad's message and timing were deliberate, and that Canada must bear consequences. Economic implications: economists warn that a 10% tariff hike on Canadian goods could have ripple effects across both economies. Higher consumer prices: tariffs would raise import costs, meaning higher prices for American consumers on Canadian lumber, food, and automotive products. Impact on key industries: Canada's auto sector, energy exports, and raw materials, such as aluminum and softwood lumber, are heavily dependent on U.S. markets. A tariff increase could disrupt production and supply chains across North America. Trade uncertainty: the threat of tariffs creates volatility in both currencies and stock markets. Canadian companies exporting to the U.S. may face reduced profitability, while U.S. manufacturers relying on Canadian materials could also struggle. Political fallout: the move is expected to strain relations between Ottawa and Washington at a time when both countries are trying to coordinate on border security, migration, and defense cooperation. According to Reuters, several Canadian business groups, including the Chamber of Commerce and Manufacturers Association, have called the U.S. move reckless and politically motivated. Political and diplomatic repercussions: the dispute is more than just an economic story, it's now becoming a political flashpoint. In the U.S., Trump's supporters argue the move protects American workers and sends a message that foreign governments can't interfere in domestic politics. His critics say it's a distraction from economic challenges at home. In Canada, the opposition parties are accusing the federal government of being too soft in dealing with Washington and are calling for a review of the country's communication strategy with the U.S. Diplomatic analysts say the tariff threat marks one of the most significant strains in U.S.-Canada relations since the steel and aluminum tariff dispute of 2018. It's not just about money, it's about political